Hello, this is Rhett Scott at hpCommerce Software. Welcome to day 5 of our HP Quick Start class. Today's class will be on kits, bill of materials, fine-tuning Orion to maximize your productivity. We want to finish up today talking about some fine-tuning options that are available in Orion. Mainly, we're going to do this in order to build awareness so that you can go in and explore these in more detail. I'm going to be hopping around between these slides and a couple different copies of Orion in order to show you how these different features work. First of all, presetting your label printing preferences. Starting from the main menu, go into System Setup and then go into Printing Defaults. Down at the bottom of the Printing Setup and Default screen, you can set up your settings that you like to use when you print labels. The reason you would want to do this is so that when you go to print labels for a part number, you just press two buttons. One, F10 to print labels, and then print the button to send the label layout over to the printer. You can indicate a default printer for every workstation, and you do that from the part number maintenance screen. When you go into label printing, there's an option to set what your default printer is for printing labels. That makes the printing of labels a seamless operation. You can set up whether or not you want to print barcodes on label. If you've said yes there, do you want to print the UPC code if it's available? You can specify the default pricing label that you want to print on a label. We're going to say none because I don't want to have to relabel all of my inventory every time my pricing changes. And then you can indicate what your default label format is. If you're going to get serious about working with barcodes, which I hope you are as a result of this class, you will want to invest in a dedicated label printer, and we recommend a Dymo 450. In addition to acquiring an inexpensive scanner, we recommend that you also acquire a label printer so that you have a dedicated tool to be able to print your labels for items that don't come in pre-labeled. And then to streamline the printing of labels as much as possible, you can set always preview labels before printing to no, and that way the printout will go directly to the default printer you've specified and you won't have to close out of any print preview. Control purchase order printouts. On the System Setup menu, we can go into the Purchasing menu, Purchasing option. You can control some features for printouts. First of all, you can indicate whether or not you want to print your logo on a purchase order, which I strongly encourage everyone to get a logo set up in order to have it print out on all the different documents that supports it. If you do not have the resources to be able to produce a logo, we can get you hooked up with a contract designer that we use that does this type of work. They will design a logo for you for a fixed price of $45 and get that all set up for you. And it's a great way of boosting the professional look of your documents. You can control whether or not the long description prints out on PO documents. You may not want those long descriptions to print out because they're really for internal consumption or for your customer to see. They're not meaningful to the vendors that you're working with, and you want to reduce the amount of space that's being used on a purchase order and remove what the vendor or supplier may think is clutter. So you can set print long descriptions on POs to no to do that. The other option you can control is whether or not the hour part number message prints out for each item on a purchase order. Once again, that could be perceived by your vendors as being clutter, and you can indicate no there, and then that will be suppressed. Tweak order entry and printouts. On the System Setup menu, or System Configuration menu rather, we have the Invoice Sales Order Setup option. And here I want to point out a few items for you. Once again, there's the print logo on invoice. And then we have the list price format of invoice. There are two different formats of invoice in HP. The default version of the sales order and invoice printout does not have a column for list price. You can turn that on by specifying yes here, and then a format of the invoice will print that has an additional column on it that specifies list price. You must maintain list price if you're going to use that format. Long description. You can control the printing of long description just like you can on purchase orders for orders, invoices, and quotes. Return to order editing after printing a sales order or pick sheet. This is a great tool for people who like to look several times at what the sales order looks like before they finalize it. HP will bring you back a blank sales order screen after you print a sales order. If you set this option to yes, what it will do is bring you back to the same place in the software where you were after you print. Turn on security and control access. We go back out to the system configuration menu, and we're going to finish up today in the system preferences option, the customer defaults and sales order defaults. You can specify the pricing levels that are to be used for parts and labor when a new customer is set up. You can also determine what the default terms are. If you set these options, then when you create a new customer, these options will be used. Same goes for sales order defaults, in that you can indicate the default order type. You may be in a situation where you do mostly work orders or shop orders, and you want the default to always be that option. That doesn't mean that after the order is started, you can't change it to a different order type. You can also set up in the Department Master and Event Master different departments and events, and then specify a default for your orders. This comes in particularly handy if you happen to be at a track on a weekend and you want to set that track event up as an event in your Event Master, and then have every single sales order that you create there be marked with that event. You can set up the event, come into here, pick this as the default event, and then every single order you create will have that event on it. The next day when you get back to the shop, you can go in here and clear this out so that your shop orders do not have that information on it. Security. You can turn on the security system in HP by selecting yes at System Security. And what that will mean is that when you start up HP, a user will be asked to enter their username and password, and those will need to match or they will not be able to get into HP. But there is some pre-work that you have to do before you can get this far. You have to go into the employee salesperson setup system that we covered in day 1 and set up security accounts for everyone who will be accessing HP, meaning you need to assign them a username, a password, and a security level. There are 3 security levels: user, which is the most restricted access, manager, and then admin, with admin having access to everything in the system. Once you have security turned on, then you're able to use these additional features. 1, you can control who can put negative quantities onto a sales order, meaning essentially a return. You can set this to yes and then specify what the override level is for it. So if you set this to yes, it doesn't mean that negative items can't go onto an order. It just means that someone with manager or admin level security will have to walk up to the computer and enter their password or PIN number in order to approve it. Same way goes with limiting returns. You can turn this on to yes, specify a number of days to limit returns, and then when an item is added to an order with a negative quantity, it knows that it's a return, and it will go back into the customer's history and look for this item and find the most recent sale date and make sure that there's one within 30 days. But that doesn't mean that if it's outside of that or no history can be found that the return can't happen. Just someone with security would need to come up and enter their username or PIN number in order to be able to approve the return. You can turn on one-step returns. What this means is that if you happen to create a credit memo or a credit invoice for a customer, do you want to go right into the refund process of specifying the method by which you're giving the money back to the customer and then the amount? You always have the option of just having that credit memo amount going right onto the customer's account as a deposit balance that they can use for future shopping, which is preferable because that means they're going to come back and spend that money with you. Shipping options. F2 will get us over to shipping options. I strongly encourage you, if you have a FedEx or a UPS account or both, to contact HP Tech Support to help you get these set up in the software. By doing that, it will open the door up to several new features in HP for you that are included. One is address validation. When you are adding customers or editing customers in the system, if you have the validation option turned on here, set to yes, then it will go out to UPS or FedEx and validate the address. It will format it for you, and it will look up whether it's commercial or residential. Very powerful tool that also helps out with duplicate checking, in that when you standardize the address, it's much easier to find duplicates. You can also use these accounts when you're adding freight lines onto orders. You can hop into a rating system that will give you live UPS and FedEx rates. You can even look up rates simultaneously for both so that you can do rate shopping. This is a great tool for you to be able to provide your customer with immediate feedback on what their shipping charges may be if they want to elect into next day delivery as opposed to ground. Using a different search form and checking for duplicate customers. Let's go back to the General tab. There is a different type of a search form in HP for searching for parts. You can turn that on right here. Use Search by Form Part Search. You can turn that on. And then any place where you're searching for a part, a different form will be used. This form has fields at the top where you can enter search criteria. You can then press a search button in the dashboard that will perform a search. And then you still have all of the grid functionality that we've seen in our other searches where you're able to filter across multiple columns and sort the information. There are two extra benefits in that there is a clear search button where you can clear out the search and perform another search rather than having to exit out of search and go back in. And then also, if you select a part and look at it and it's not the one you were after, you can escape back out of part maintenance and it will bring you back to the search form exactly where you left it, so you don't have to perform the search over again. We've seen how you can set up HP so that you can bypass the product line code field. So that's right here, be able to bypass PLC when searching for parts. You can bypass entering the product line code and hop right over into the part number field and just search by part number, with the option of still optionally entering the product line code if you want, but it's not required. And then finally, I want to touch on how to control costs and prices and how they're calculated. On this screen, we can use the default selling price recalculation mode. What this controls is when you're in part number maintenance and you change the base cost, it asks you if you want to update pricing at that time. That box that pops up has three options: do not update, use the product line code markups, or use the custom item markups. Using this option on system setup, you can set what the default is, so that all you have to do is just press enter.